So I'm in a bit of a situation here. It's a case of the irony, one might say. I'm lacking the drive and motivation to finish this video. And I don't know what to do that'll help. Let me reach out to a few friends, see what they say.
How do I deal with feeling demotivated when it comes to being creative? Well, it's definitely something that happens to everyone. I mean, being in a constant creative state would be impossible for even the most creative people, I would imagine. I definitely think it's something that you're kind of like in and you're out of. It's cyclical, like all of your emotional states, right? So I think if I am ever feeling sort of demotivated or I'm lacking inspiration, what I have to do is whatever space I'm in feeling like that, I need to leave it. I need to get the heck out of that space. And ideally, if I'm feeling like that, it's usually a very kind of passive state. I'm on the couch or I'm sitting at the computer or staring at a blank page. I'm passive. Nothing's happening with my body. My brain is kind of like stalled. And for me, getting some form of exercise is usually my best strategy to just get the heart pumping, break a sweat. That helps. As I'm kind of out there actively pursuing something, the creativity starts to flow. Like I feel the least place to be creative is like sitting at your desk trying to be creative. It's like trying to force yourself to sleep. If you're cognizant of like going to sleep and you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to sleep. You start worrying about not going to sleep. And it's the same thing with being creative. You start worrying about not being creative and that's just going to crush everything. So I think for me, exercise, absolutely. The ideas come streaming in. Most of them are no good, but at least the ideas are there. It's just fruit I get to pick and then bite into and see if they're any good kind of thing. But that's my number one strategy. And I think it's okay if you feel unmotivated sometimes, but recognize it and get out of whatever state you're in. That's my best advice. Hopefully that helps.
All right, let's get right to it. Mark kind of added two big good pieces of advice, and I think I just want to add to those. Number one, you want to remember what last motivated you or what motivated you the first time you ever started getting into the field of creative work or writing or whatever it is you do. So for me, what motivated me into storytelling was reading Wheel of Time, watching Lord of the Rings, or watching just about most modern art films or just art films in general, art house films. So whenever I'm feeling lack of motivation, the first thing I usually do is go watch a film. So I'll either rewatch Lord of the Rings. I'll sometimes read Wheel of Time. It's 14 books, so it's hard to like read it, but sometimes I'll just pick up a random book or pick up a passage, I'll read it. And a lot of times what I'll find is like when I finish reading or I'll finish watching Lord of the Rings or whatever film, I'll find myself really moved and motivated to go and shoot something because that's my expression. The moment you get really motivated, you'll want to go create. You'll go want to express. And I think that that's something that's really important to remember what motivated you to rewatch it or re-experience it or to explore more art and try to get more motivation through other people's arts. Number two, sometimes this is going to sound weird, but the best way to find motivation, especially if you're stuck on an idea and you feel like you don't really feel that drive for that idea anymore, is to just pause and move on. I find a lot of times for me, I'll be working on stories, and this is when I kind of explain how I work on stories. Is I'll write as much as I can, and then I'll pause it and I'll put it away. And then I'll let the idea kind of muster in the back. And I do this for all my work. I do this for all my YouTube videos. I get a bunch of interesting concepts and ideas, and I'll write as much as I can, and then I'll put it away. And then I just let the brain kind of muster new concepts and new ideas. And it starts to work on its own. And then I'll kind of come back to it months later, and it's just so much more that's there in my brain, in my head, new things that I've been thinking about that I want to add to it. And you'll find that like when you especially put it away and maybe you'll try figuring something else to do, you'll find that like sometimes you'll be like, oh, maybe I'll bring this in here and try this here, and then I'll bring it back here. It's like so much you can do once you sometimes just let it pause and work on it later. For Your Benefit was one of those stories. I worked on it and I did a draft of it early, and then I just never touched it. And then I worked on it later, especially when I realized that I was going to get the house alone for a few weeks. And I'm like, okay, we're going to shoot For Your Benefit. Let me bring it back up and let me work on the script so it's right. Number 3 is to push through. This is going to be one of the harder things to do. This is especially relevant if you're a writer. And this happens a lot when you're doing your first draft. You'll be in the middle of the draft. You'll feel like it's your worst work and what you're writing is absolute garbage, and you'll just not want to continue. And I plead you that a lot of times just kind of getting through it, and even if it's garbage, it's called the vomit draft for a reason. That's what the first draft is usually called, vomit. It's the vomit draft. So just get through it and you'll have a foundation for your second draft to then improve. So this tip and the previous tip can kind of go hand in hand, at least for me. So what I'll do is I'll sometimes just trudge through the mud of what the first draft is, and I'll put it away after. Once I finish the first draft, I'll put it away. I'll let my brain kind of keep thinking about other ideas and new things. And then I'll come back to the second draft later on. So when I look at it again, it's with new eyes while being able to still lay a foundation there. Because it's much harder to go back to the idea in the middle versus if you've completed a thought for the idea. It's possible, it's just harder, at least for me. And number 4, and this is the last tip I have for you now. I'm sure I'll think of more later and I'll add more to other videos, or I'll put it in the comment if I think of anything else, but it's just to relax. It's really hard to be creative when you're very stressed out. It's possible, it's just really hard. It's also why I think that you get the best ideas when you're like in the shower or sometimes when you're working out. It's because it's places where you're just a lot more relaxed. So try to figure out things that tend to make you relax, whether it's meditation or playing sports or playing video games or doing anything else that can just ease you. Maybe take an extra shower, maybe go binge a series on Netflix. There's so much things you can do. Maybe go take a hike, go for a run. Things to do that like relax you. And once you're relaxed, I find it's much easier to be creative, whether it's right after or even during. You'll find that you come up with some really good ideas. That's really about it. If I did help you get out of any of your ruts, or if I got you starting to think about ways that you might be able to get out of your ruts, leave a like, really does help. If you have any thoughts, concerns, leave a comment. I read all my comments. If you love my voice, subscribe. It really does help. If you really love my voice, you can see my other social medias. Media? You can see my other social media. Below in the description, I have Twitter, Instagram. I stream occasionally on Twitch, but I'm going to be doing less of that, focusing more on content. That's really about it. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.